I tried to fill the void with other fantasy romances. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video, I'm going to be reviewing some of the handful of fantasy romance novels that I have read in the past week. And you guys might be wondering, Lisa, this is very uncharacteristic of you to read fantasy romance. You typically only read contemporary romance, and then sometimes you read a bit of historical romance too, a bit meaning a lot, but I never really seen you read fantasy romance. And the reason why is because I recently had the pleasure of finishing Laura Thalassa's novel Death, and it's the fourth book. It's the last book in her Four Horsemen series, and I absolutely adore that series. I think I'm going to do a video where I discuss like why I love the series so much, but maybe who knows. Long story short, I finished that series. I felt a huge bookish hangover. I didn't want to say goodbye to the characters. I didn't want to say goodbye to the dystopian world where the four horsemen come to Earth to kill the entire planet and to kill the human population and to destroy civilization as we know it. And after I finished that book, I was looking towards other romances that could have that same feeling and that to bring me that same escapism that I do crave in novels right now. I've talked to a lot of readers who are more of a fantasy reader, whether they be focusing in fantasy YA or fantasy romance. And they've all told me the same things. The reason why they love fantasy the most is because they want to escape. And you know what? I don't blame them. You know, after a tiring day at work, sometimes contemporary novels can be a little bit too realistic and we need to go into a different world. So I picked up a few of the fantasy romances that have been trending on BookTube and also on BookTok, and I read them, and here are my thoughts on them. So the first book that I want to talk about is definitely the book that made me want to read fantasy romance, and that's Death by Laura Thalassa. So like I mentioned in the intro, Death is the fourth horseman. It's the last book in the Quartet series, and basically Death is kind of annoyed that his three older brothers or his three brothers haven't completed their mission to destroy human civilization. So pestilence, we have war, and we also have famine. They all failed to destroy human civilization because they fell in love with a human. They are thinking differently about people, and they want to give more chances to people to right their sins and to really be a better person and to really take care of the planet that they were given. So all three of them have changed, but Death feels like it's his duty and it's his mission to destroy Earth as he knows it. But the one problem is that there's this one female that he can't seem to kill. So the way that he kills people is that he feels their soul and rips their soul from their bodies, and he can't pull her soul away from his body. So he knows that this woman is very special, and this woman represents life while he represents death. And they have this very intricate star-crossed romance where they are destined to be with each other, but their missions and their morals and their goals in their life don't align. And they're constantly having this really high tension romance where one of them believes that they're destined to be together and they accept the fact that they're different, and the other one doesn't want to fall in love with someone who is completely different from them and basically is destroying everything that she loves. I absolutely adored Death. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 stars, but Death was my favorite horseman, mostly because Death was very possessive in a healthy way. He was very protective, and he was also very caring about our heroine's emotions. He was definitely something that I wasn't expecting, because when I was reading like Famine, which is like the last book, and in the epilogue or like in the last chapter, we kind of meet Death for the first time. And when I was reading Death, I wasn't really sure how I feel about him because Death sounded such a cruel character who has like no emotions. And I knew that Laura would try to make our characters kind of have that really stubbornness that they hold, where they really want to stand their ground and they want to complete their missions. So I was unsure whether or not Death could bend that way and could compromise with our female heroine in his book. But when I was reading Death, I absolutely fell in love with him. I felt like he was like the biggest cinnamon roll ever, and he's my favorite horseman of them all. So I definitely recommend you to check out this series or continue this series if you already started it already. So the book that I picked up to fill the void of Death was this one called A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. And I've seen this one everywhere. Like I think I've seen it on BookTube, and I'm sure probably saw it on Book Talk, and I saw it on Instagram too as well. Lots of people were talking about this book, but since I wasn't in the right mindset for fantasy romance, I didn't obviously pick it up. But you know what? When I pick out TBRs, I just pick out the most popular books to see what's the hype. So this one falls like fae and like fairies, and there's like this fae king, and he needs to marry someone, but that someone is his like destined person, like it's his mate basically. He's been searching throughout the whole lands looking for this human queen, and he can't find it, and he feels like he's failing as a king because this human queen has magical powers and has the ability to like make the seasons change, and that is what is very crucial and critical to like harvesting food. Lo and behold, our heroine just so happens to be the human queen, but she was disguised as a normal fae when she was little, and then he finally finds her and he forces her into this marriage of convenience where she is able to save the people, but she also is going to have a bargain with him. If she fulfills her part of her job, she's able to go back home to her family and to take care of everybody that she loves and cares about. And she's also like really cool too because she knows like medicinal things, so she's able to make potions and solutions to cure people. So it's kind of like this like enemies to lovers romance, but it's like not really, because our hero doesn't really hate her. Our hero just wants to make her comfortable all the time and make sure that she is safe, because in the kingdom there's such a cast of very dramatic characters who don't appreciate her and who don't think that she belongs, and that she's constantly going head to head with them, and it's like that very like dramatic story. So overall I enjoyed it because I felt like the world building was something that I could imagine and that it wasn't too complicated. I knew where the plot was going, and I just thought that the characters were just, they read a little bit like a contemporary romance. We got our classic catty characters who are sabotaging her. Then we have our hero who pretends to not care and be very stoic, but also is always there in the nick of time to save her from things. So overall, I thought this was like a good book. I gave this one a 3.5 stars because it just lacked that tension that I would have liked a lot more between our two characters. And then the ending was just a little like, okay, like it felt like a little not wishy-washy, but it just felt like that she was running away from her problems a lot of the times and she wasn't going to face them until like the very end. So still a good book, but definitely not as good as Death. So I've actually never read any of Laura's books prior to the Four Horsemen, but I know that she wrote like 2 series. So it's called like the Bargainer series. So I read book number 1, which is called Rhapsodic. And this one I wanted to read because I think the Bookish box is doing like limited editions of Rhapsodic in hardcovers with like really pretty dust jackets. And my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers loved this series, gave every book a 5 out of 5 stars, and she even bought the limited edition ones. And I couldn't justify buying the limited edition ones if I haven't read the series, because what happens if I don't like the books? Then I have like limited editions of these books I don't even like, and they cost me like a very pretty penny. So I decided to read Rhapsodic because if something's going to fill the void, it's going to be the same author that wrote the book that caused me to have that book hangover. So Rhapsodic follows this character who is basically, I was like saying that she's like a crime solving detective, and she made a lot of these deals with this supernatural character, and like it's all supernatural, like it's a very paranormal romance novel, but she made all these deals with the bargainer, and she owes these favors to the bargainer. And one of the favors that he redeems is to have her and him go on to this journey to solve this like mystery of what actually happened. And of course, they are not supposed to be together because they had this whirlwind romance that kind of fell apart, and she's still not over it, and he's obviously still not over it, and there's always these lingering feelings between them. And it also tells a story from the past and the present, and along this journey, they are rediscovering their feelings for each other, they're relearning about each other's pasts, And it's just kind of like a dark paranormal romance in a sense too as well, because trigger warnings that our heroine suffers sexual assault trauma. So our heroine was actually sexually assaulted. She's a sexual assault victim, and she has, you know, those lingering fears and emotions that come with trauma like that. And so that does happen in the book, and I just wanted to give that warning before you jump in there. Anyways, this one was something that I was not expecting. I thought it was a little bit weird at first that our heroine was this like paranormal detective. I didn't really get that vibe when I was reading the synopsis of the book, so I just kind of went along with it. But then I personally don't like mystery, so when I have that mystery element to it, I get kind of bored because I get very impatient with not knowing who the person is. This is like completely different because I do read thriller novels and I love like learning to see like the twists and turns. But with romance, I just want to focus more on the romance. I think there was a problem with this book also because I was listening to audiobook and the narrator was just so bad. Like she just made me so annoyed. Like her voice was annoying and the way that she read the story was annoying. So it definitely took some like enjoyment level from it. And I think a lot of people really like our hero because our hero is super protective and super loving. And he's just one of those like characters that everybody falls in love with. Personally, the narrator made him unbearable. But if I were to read it on ebook, I definitely would give it a higher rating. I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, mostly because this book had nothing really happen in it until towards the end where it was left on a cliffhanger and made me want to read book number 2. So there's 3 books in the series and it follows the same couple, follows the same mystery, and they're all solving it together in this grand adventure. So this one is a series that I want to continue, but not right away, if that makes sense. So the last book that I read to try to fill the void was this one called The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jensen. Now, I've seen my friends Jessica from Peace Love Books read this book, and she absolutely adored it. I think she gave it like a 4.5 out of 5 stars, or maybe a 5 out of 5. This one read like a YA Sarah J. Maas novel. Now, I haven't read Sarah J. Maas, but I feel like that this is what a YA fantasy romance would run like. So this one follows our heroine who has been trained all her life to be a very skilled assassin. But she is also very gorgeous and she's also trained to be like a lady because she wants to be, you know, the king's wife, because she's going to infiltrate like her enemy's kingdom and pretend to be like a peace offering. But in reality, she's in the kingdom to go search for secrets about this like bridge, and she is disguising herself as this really docile creature, but in reality she's like literally like going to kill you in like 3 seconds flat with a spoon. Like she's that good. And our hero doesn't really trust her a lot because, you know, it's the enemy's daughter. Now she's like sneaking around the kingdom and she's doing a lot of crazy stuff. Obviously, it makes sense for him not to trust her. And they go about their secret missions to uncover things, and they go on this grand adventure to go look into this bridge. Anyways, so this book, I actually DNF'd it. I could not stand it. It was just no romance. It read like a fantasy book instead of a fantasy romance. I didn't care. There was just like not enough scenes where our two characters were actually together when I was reading the book for like the, at least like the first half of it. And I don't like it sometimes when the stories follows characters that are deceiving people, because like she starts to realize obviously that maybe it's her people who are the awful people and that other people are the victims, and then now she's helping like the awful people hurt more victims, and she doesn't know which side to pick because she believes in her dad and what her dad says about how her husband's people are evil, but then when she goes over there she realizes that they're actually pretty great people and they're helping everyone. So it was one of those classic story retellings. I just wanted something more. I DNF'd it, and I gave this one a 2 out of 5 stars because overall I just found it super boring. But anyways, that is it for all the fantasy romance novels that I tried to read to fill the void of finishing The Four Horsemen by Laura Thalassa. Love those books so much. Can't wait to get my copy in the mail. But if you guys enjoy fantasy romance and if you guys think that you guys have recommendations that are similar to The Four Horsemen by Laura Thalassa, let me know in the comments down below. And I'll see you guys again next time in a new video. Bye.